One of the ways blacks dealt with their unpleasant condition in Chicago was by developing race pride. It was one of the few tools available for them to fight against white oppression. And in that fight, they relied on certain leaders to carry much of the weight. Now, all these leaders didn't always have the same heart behind it. Some were heroes and some were hustlers. But together they made up the three faces of black advancement in Chicago. Here it comes. We're continuing from the 1945 book Black Metropolis by St. Clair Drake and Horace Cayton. Prudence. Negroes are ill at ease in the land of their birth. Who are we talking about? Negroes. And where's their land of birth? Right here on American soil, where they felt ill at ease because of this. They are bombarded with the slogans of democracy, liberty, freedom, equality, but they are not allowed to participate freely in American life. They experience the hypocrisy of white Americans who preach the good gospel of liberty and equality, but practice the opposite. They develop a tormenting ambivalence toward themselves and the larger society of which they are a part. America rejects them, so they tend to hate, meaning hate society as a whole and also to hate themselves. But it is the only land they know, so they are sentimentally attached to it. They didn't know about Central or West Africa, the Congo or Nigeria. Their ancestors from hundreds of years prior knew about that, but Negroes in 1940 Chicago knew about the United States and the United States alone. That's why they were sentimentally attached to it. Their skin color and social origins subject them to discrimination and contumely, so they often, consciously or unconsciously, despise the race. Their social origins were from slavery, and their skin color was various shades of brown, which they were conditioned to call black. So of course many of them would consciously or unconsciously despise the race. The people they know most intimately, however, are colored, and men cannot totally hate themselves and their friends. Thus their moods fluctuate between shame and defiance. Their conversation becomes a bewildering mixture of expressions of racial depreciation and race pride. So one minute it's putting down the race, then the next minute it's celebrating it. Negroes feel impelled to prove to themselves continually that they are not the inferior creatures which their minority status implies. Thus, ever since emancipation, Negro leaders have preached the necessity for cultivating race pride. They have assiduously repeated the half-truth that no other race has ever made the progress that Negroes have made in an equivalent length of time. He calls it a half-truth, and I'm unsure why. But the fact is, Negroes had a peculiar history unlike anyone before. So it's hard to make an exact comparison to figure out who made progress faster, because nobody in history started so far down in the pit as Negroes did. You see, it's one thing for groups to be massacred and tortured in large numbers over a short period, which is most certainly a terrible thing. But it's a different kind of destruction when a group's mind, culture, and habits are forcefully conditioned over centuries to embody inferiority and self-hate. So Negroes had to fix more than a material condition. They also had to fix mental, moral, and cultural conditions, which the progress made by them when this book was published can't easily be compared to any other group's history. They have patiently attempted to popularize an expanding roster of race heroes, individuals who have attained success or prominence, which they should do, right? That's what helps build group confidence. Catching up with the white folks has been developed as the dominating theme of inspirational exhortations, and the Negro firsts and onlys are set up as race heroes. This here is what became a distraction. Thinking too much about what whites were doing and constantly comparing themselves to whites. Beating the white man at his own game becomes a powerful motivation for achievement and explains the popularity of such personalities as Joe Louis or Jesse Owens, George Washington Carver, or outstanding soldier heroes. A myth of special gifts has also emerged, with Negroes, and whites also, believing that American Negroes have some inborn, unusual talent as dancers, musicians, artists, and athletes. This area here has to be treaded lightly, because it opens up doors that many people may not really want to enter. Because if Negroes are inborn with dancing, musical, and athletic talents, then who's to say that whites weren't born with analytical, intellectual, or rational talents? This is the exact observation that slave masters made way back in the day. They claimed that those called blacks were deficient in the mental department, but were naturally artistic. And it was the opposite for whites. So do people really want to play this game? You got to think about it. In the period between the First and the Second World Wars, this emphasis upon race pride became a mass phenomenon among the Negroes in large urban communities. Race consciousness was transformed into a positive and aggressive defensive racialism, a way to push back against the constant message of inferiority. They used race pride as a tool of defense. Negroes in Black metropolis, as in other communities, feeling the strength of their economic and political power, have become increasingly aware of the achievements of individual Negroes and have developed an absorbing interest in every scrap of evidence that the race is advancing, or is catching up with white folks, or is beating the white man at his own game. Unable to compete freely as individuals, the Negro masses take intense vicarious pleasure in watching race heroes vindicate them in the eyes of the white world. Race pride is a defensive reaction that can become a mere verbal escape mechanism, meaning it could turn into just talking a good game but not doing much to back it up. Claiming to be the best or claiming to be catching up, but not doing the deeds to demonstrate that. Negro leaders are therefore perpetually involved in an effort to make race pride more than an end in itself, to utilize it as a morale builder, as the raw material of racial solidarity. They seek to use it for advancing the race. They foster race pride in order to elicit support for collective action, the support of Negro business enterprises, the organization of petition and protest, the focusing of economic and political power. All very powerful ways to use that tool. Because if people are motivated and proud, then they're much likely to organize and take action. The most persistent theme of speeches and editorials in Bronzeville is
Negroes must learn to stick together.
Same talk today heard from their Black/African American descendants. But there's not going to be any sticking together. That's what I'm telling you. The chances of that happening went out the window after the Civil Rights era. The only thing masses of blacks stick together for today are police brutality and anything that has to do with white oppression. Anything outside of that, good luck. That's what I have to say. Any attempt on rebuilding a black community or to get 40 plus million of them together for the purpose of progress and self-improvement, good luck. Because so many people have tried to do that when blacks were forced to live together and they never could truly succeed. So now that blacks have all the opportunity to live where they want, be an individual like American culture promotes, and can do their own thing, good luck. If you think that you're going to get that extremely divided community to stick together somehow, you have a better chance of seeing Jesus return than to see that community stick together. And Jesus is not returning. The best that people can do is have small pockets of the black community come together on shared interest or common goals, and that's about it. And you do see that today. But back then, you could see that they were still struggling with sticking together, even when it was most pressuring them to do so. Because like I said before, it wasn't meant for that. It's not meant to stay as Negroes and black people. It's not meant for that. The leaders use it also to encourage individual achievement by interpreting the success of one Negro as the success of all, which is great for promoting unity. Out of this interplay between race consciousness, race pride, and race solidarity arise certain definite social types: the race hero, the race leader, the race man, the race woman. We'll learn about each of these today. Get ready. And the woman being lumped into the category of race man. So come on with it. The average person in Bronzeville is primarily interested in staying alive, getting ahead, having a good time, and praising the Lord. Bronzeville is the neighborhood that authors use to replace the Black Belt going forward in the book. It's a specific neighborhood in South Chicago where the average Negro was interested in staying alive, getting ahead, having a good time, and praising the Lord. Conscious preoccupation with racial advancement is fitful and sporadic, though always latent. The average Negro wasn't thinking about black advancement. They were preoccupied with too many other things. Only a few were. But as a group, the potential for collective action was there. At the surface, when the time was right to bring it out. This is what they're talking about. The masses leave the burden of the race to those individuals who are oriented around service, the race leaders. And because of that, I imagine this was a huge responsibility to carry, being that race issues were left mostly to them. Some of these are people who devote much of their leisure time to charitable organizations or associations for racial advancement. For others, solving the race problem is a full-time job. For instance, a score or so of individuals in Bronzeville are elected and appointed politicians who represent the race. There are also a few civic leaders who earn their living by administering social agencies such as the Urban League, the YMCA, the YWCA, settlement houses, and similar organizations. In Bronzeville, too, there are numerous self-appointed leaders, men and women, often illiterate and poverty-stricken, who feel the call to lead the race out of bondage. They harangue their small groups of followers on the streets, in storefronts, or in the public parks with a fanaticism that alienates them from the masses, as well as from the affluent and educated. Most of the people in Bronzeville do not hold membership in any of the organizations for racial advancement, such as the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, NAACP, the National Negro Congress, the Urban League, or the Council of Negro Organizations. They follow the activities of race leaders in the Negro press. They cheer and applaud an occasionally highly publicized victory over those who maintain the job ceiling and the black ghetto. They grumble persistently about lack of leadership. They contribute an occasional nickel or dime to drives for funds. But when some inciting incident stirs them deeply, they close ranks and put up a scrap for a community housing project, to remove a prejudiced policeman, to force a recalcitrant merchant to employ Negroes. Those were the issues that mattered enough to the masses of Negroes to get them to stick together. Housing issues, prejudiced police, and job discrimination. That's according to the authors. And they periodically vote for Negroes to represent them in state, local, and national bodies. In general, solving the race problem is left in the hands of race leaders, the racial watchdogs, as one Bronzeville preacher called them. I don't know how the race problem was going to be solved that way, but apparently that's how the people wanted to operate. Race leaders are expected to put up some sort of aggressive fight against the exclusion and subordination of Negroes. They must also stress catching up with white folks, and this involves the less dramatic activity of appeals for discipline within the Black Belt, and pleas for Negroes to take advantage of opportunities to advance. A race leader has to fight the job ceiling in Black Ghetto, and at the same time needle, cajole, and denounce Negroes themselves for inertia, diffidence, and lack of race pride, and the functions sometimes conflict. So they had two fights on their hands. The first was against job and housing discrimination, and the second was to get masses of Negroes motivated enough to take action in their own interest, and to get them to have more confidence in themselves. So this was nothing short of a tough job for the leaders. There is rather widespread agreement in Bronzeville on what an ideal race leader should be. When the people are asked to describe a real race leader, they always stress sincerity as a cardinal virtue. A race leader, they say,
knows the difficulties of the race and fights without a selfish reason. is a sincere person with some moral principle, is sincere and has a plan, has a constant, sincere interest in the race, is sincere and people know he is not after some hidden personal interest, has the interest and well-being of the Negro race uppermost in his life.
Sincerity is prized, but, as one of the persons quoted above stated, a leader must have a plan. Theories about solving the race problem range all the way from amalgamation to immigration to Africa. Basically become a white man with brown skin, or go to a continent they knew nothing about. From sympathy with communism to the demand for a 49th Negro state. That's some pretty ambitious thinking here. A 49th state with all Negroes? Now, this would have been quite interesting to see how this worked out. The accepted leaders, however, tend to be people who stress the use of political and economic pressure without violence and gradual advancement by slowly raising the economic and educational level of the entire group. Kind of similar to Booker T. Washington's philosophy. But it's good that these leaders were thinking in terms of group, because that was where their strength was at. But for this to work, everyone had to be on board as a team. A leader must be able to formulate and present the Negro's demands and aspirations to white people. Many people insist that a real leader must be calm, well-poised, well-trained. Some think he should be an educated person who has a great deal of influence with whites and prestige with Negroes. The more conservative people feel that he should also be a person who believes strongly in caution and patience, and who is adept in the arts of personal and political compromise. Bronzeville knows that the powers of its leaders are limited, that in the final analysis the white majority can break any leader who is too aggressive. It is well aware that white America makes concessions to Negroes primarily from the imperatives of economic necessity and political expediency, rather than from devotion to democratic ideals. Whites expanded rights and opportunities to blacks only when they were economically and politically forced to. Not because they had some great moral awakening, resurrected from the grave, and became enlightened. It was because the circumstances of life jammed them up in such a way that they had to concede or risk losing a whole lot. Out of this knowledge arises a kind of cynical realism which does not expect too much from leaders. Bronzeville knows, too, that leaders are human, that they are motivated by the desire for power and prestige, as well as by the service ideal. The whole business of advancing the race offers wide opportunities for fraud, graft, and chicanery. The avenues were open for leaders to choose ye this day, whether they will walk the path of bribery, fraud, and scamming the people, or if they will do what is right in the sight of the Lord. Either way, the opportunity was open in this line of work. And the reality is, there were no shortages of whites who dealt in bribery and fraud. And also, no shortages of Negroes who could be bought with a price. Come on with it. There are opportunities for selling out to the white folks, diverting funds from the cause, or making a racket out of race, meaning race hustling, using race as a means to personal gain instead of real upliftment. Many black leaders became very good at doing this, especially as time went on. The race industry is a real business today, and both blacks and whites have made a lot of money from it. A lot. And this was one of the opportunities available in the whole business of advancing the race. People try to draw a line between sincere race leaders and those racemen who are always clamoring everything for the race, just for the glory of being known. They will characterize some leaders as being like the William Randolph Hearst variety of patriot, whose Americanism means a chance to make more money. They are skeptical of those who, when you see them, are always talking about the race. Sincerity is hard to test, however, and Bronzeville seems to expect that its leaders will cash in on their positions, in terms of personal influence, if not in terms of money. So that was the race leader. Now let's move on to the race man. Here we go. The race man, frustrated in their isolation from the mainstreams of American life and in their impotence to control their fate decisively, Negroes tend to admire an aggressive race man even when his motives are suspect. They will applaud him because in the face of the white world he remains proud of his race and always tries to uphold it, whether it is good or bad, right or wrong, because he sees only the good points of the race. So the race man is a champion to Negroes. He's admired because he always stands up for them, and he only focuses on their good, which makes him popular. One high school girl explained that
the race man is interested in the welfare of the people. Everybody says that they admire a race man, but behind the scenes, they may not regard him as being sincere. The race man is usually a politician or a businessman. He sponsors movements for the benefit of the people. It is a way of securing honor and admiration from the people. Personally, I admire a race man even if he seeks his own advancement.
a well-known minister interpreted the admiration for the race man as follows.
The people are emotionally enthusiastic about a race man. They know that a race man may not be quite as sincere as some of the more quiet leaders. Still, the very fact of his working for the race gives him prestige in their eyes.
So that's the race man, including the woman in there like he talked about in the beginning. Champion of Negroes, questionable sincerity, but nonetheless still a prestigious person in the community. Next we have the race hero. Pay attention. A race man is one type of race hero, the race hero. If a man fights for the race, if he seems to be all for the race, if he is fearless in his approach to white people, he becomes a race hero. Who might be an example of this? Someone like Malcolm X or Marcus Garvey. Similarly, any Negro becomes a hero if he beats the white man at his own game or forces the white world to recognize his talent or service or achievement. Racketeer or preacher, reactionary or communist, ignoramus or savant. If a man is an aggressive, vocal, uncompromising race man, he is everybody's hero. Even conservative Negroes admire colored radicals who buck the white world. Preachers may oppose sin, but they will also express a sneaking admiration for a Negro criminal who decisively outwits white people. Even the quiet, well-disciplined family man may get a thrill when a bad Negro blows his top and goes down with both guns blazing at the white law. Such identification is usually covert and unconscious, and may even be feared and regretted by the very persons who experience it. Race pride sometimes verges upon the vindictive, but it is a direct result of the position to which white America has consigned the Negro group. It was the result of white oppression, and a response to it, and a necessary response to it for that time at that. So hopefully you have enjoyed this. We'll pick back up with more in the next commentary. I thank you for your time and attention. My name is Brooklyn St. Michael, and I'll see you in the free world.